What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jericho8704, here to give you a little bit of a different video than the usual gig. As you all know, it is the summertime, so I am currently not in school. I'm headed to my senior year of college in the fall, which is just absolutely crazy to me. But besides that, my junior year was very interesting. In addition to sharpening my theatrical craft and, honing my skills and learning all a bunch of different subjects and completing a liberal arts college degree, I've been able to get a lot of intel on the mindset of casual fans slash, new fans into wrestling. I have two instances of this, and I would like to share them with both of you, and that's the topic of today's video. Basically, analyzing the opinions and the reactions to wrestling from casual fans. So the first person I want to talk about is my boss. I am an RA on campus, so my advisor in my building, he has one-on-one meetings with us every single week. And the meetings had a different topic every single week in a rotation of 4. And the third week was called a quote-unquote fun-on-one, where basically we could do whatever we want with him for the 30-minute time slot where we had our meeting with him for that week. So I determined that every time we were going to have these quote-unquote fun-on-ones, we were going to watch wrestling. I was just going to pick a match and we would watch it together. So I did this mainly for two reasons. One, because it was a great, break in my week where I could just, sit down and watch a good match. And I wanted to gauge how he responded. He said he had watched wrestling when he was a kid. He's probably, he's a couple years older than me, probably maybe like 8 or 9 years older than me. So, he was watching, in the mid to late 90s and stuff like that as a kid, just casually. He was never like a diehard fan or anything like that. But he was aware of, who certain wrestlers were. Like he knew The Rock, he knew Stone Cold, he knew people like that. So I picked out some matches for him to watch. Overall, throughout the course of the year, we watched 6 total matches. So I want to break them down one by one. The first match we watched was Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega at the G1 Climax 2017. And he responded very positively to this match. He really kind of, this is his first introduction to Japanese wrestling, of course. And one thing he noted that I thought was very interesting is he was saying how he felt like it was almost like a video game watching Omega and Okada, to the point where it was like it was all, quote unquote, stealing his quotes, it was all special moves is what he said. And I found this very interesting, mainly because, we kind of praise New Japan, as being, the best company right now in terms of wrestling, in terms of just basically overall quality. Everyone goes to New Japan as the definitive company right now in 2018. So, he really kind of was driving home what a lot of people tend to criticize about, not necessarily New Japan, but just wrestling in the 21st century, especially in this day and age, of just constant moves, not really like, a slower pace or storytelling. But I mean, the story behind the G1 Climax match with Okada and Omega was the fact that, they'd gone to the hour limit draw at Dominion, so now it was like they only had 30 minutes. Kenny Omega had to put him away in as little time as possible if he had wanted any chance of defeating Okada for the first time. So, I mean, the quickness and the almost balls-to-the-wall kind of action played into the match, but you could tell he was really the casual fan, someone who really isn't into wrestling. They responded positively to that. So I don't know if it's an evolution to... if it's an evolution of the wrestling fan or just evolution of people in general of, what they want from their wrestling. I don't know if the slower pace is what people want. Consequently, the next match we watched was Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne at NXT TakeOver. Now, obviously, in my opinion, this match isn't as good as Okada and Omega, but it's still a different stroke for different folk. Someone who is more into a slower, methodical style would really respond to this match over Okada and Omega. Now, that's not to say this match is just a complete snooze fest or it's dull and it moves like molasses. That's not the case at all. This match moves very quickly. It picks up towards the end, but they start out very, they're doing the chain wrestling. Pete Dunne's doing his finger spots and shit like that. And I mean, there are some really cool high spots, like, Tyler Bate doing the best airplane spin of all time. And again, by the end of the match, it does seem like your very typical modern wrestling match, with just a bunch of high spots and a bunch of near falls and shit like that. And they were kind of picking up the pace. But my boss, I could just tell he really wasn't into the earlier portions of the match as he was with Okada and Omega. He just wasn't. And I found that really interesting in the sense that, people get criticized all the time for the way their styles work, but I think it's just what people are responding to now. I don't know if it's just an attention span thing or whatever, but that was just what I noticed. So the third match we watched Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero from Halloween Havoc 1997. Now, my boss really, really liked this match. He basically because he knew of Guerrero and Mysterio. He remembered them from when he was a kid watching WCW. So he was totally into this match. He thought honestly, when I watched it, I thought this match aged exponentially well. It looked awesome. It was so great. And the thing about it is, it's still pretty fast paced. This kind of is the precursor for the modern day wrestling match that we've all kind of come to know and some people have come to criticize. And the thing is, this match isn't necessarily that long and it told a really good story. And I mean, the mask title dilemma was, really kind of, it raised the stakes of the match, obviously. But of course, in 2018, when all those circumstances are removed from the match, it isn't as exciting, but still, he really responded positively to all the spots and the moves. The match didn't seem to, lag compared to modern classics like Bait and Dunn from TakeOver and Omega and Okada at the G1. It aged perfectly well, and it kind of was on the level of those matches, and I was kind of surprised. Brian Alvarez kind of talked about it. I'm just going to kind of go on a little bit of a tangent here. I was listening to the Brian and Vinny show on F4W, and they were talking about how gimmick matches tend to not age as well as just pure wrestling. And I think I tend to agree with that. I think there are some exceptions to gimmick matches, obviously, but I do agree with that. Pure wrestling will always get over no matter what time period it is. And as long as you're responding to the crowd and responding to what the crowd wants to see, you're always going to get over. And I think this match is a prime example of it. He really loved this match. And I think nostalgia was driving a little bit of it, considering he knew both guys and he was such a big fan of Rey Mysterio, he said, growing up as a kid. So, I mean, that did drive a lot of his enjoyment, but still, he really liked it, which I just thought was very interesting. So the next match we watched was Tanahashi and Shibata from Destruction 2014. Now this match, I think he thought it was a good match to me. To me, this is one of my favorite matches of all time. I love this match. I'm a huge Tanahashi mark, as all of you know. And this match to me is just one of his best and one of Shibata's best, if not his best match. I love this match. I was so into it. This is like my 50th time watching it that day. And I was just like glued to the screen. All I could do, I couldn't even talk to him, because we usually kind of we would shoot the shit during these matches. We wouldn't just be eyes glued to the screen the entire time. Usually in the feeling out process, in the beginning of the match, my boss and I would just be going back and forth. But by the end, when all the high spots were kicking in, he was not talking to me at all. He was watching the match. But this match, I don't know. He didn't really seem into it. I kind of built up Tanahashi a lot. I just told him how much I love Tanahashi. And, he was really not necessarily into it that much. I think one thing might be, this was the first match we watched with Japanese commentary. I mean, when I played Okada and Omega for him, I had the English commentary. I don't know if the Japanese commentary was something that kind of phased him out of the match. I don't know if there was a language barrier there. I don't know if that was one of the things that drove his enjoyment from the match. I'm not saying that as like an insult to him or like an insult to people in general who don't like the Japanese commentary. I mean, a lot of people want to hear. I mean, the point of the announcers is to tell you the story of the match. It's to guide you through the match, because wrestling is a non-verbal performing art. So you kind of need those announcers there. They're really the chorus in a play. You know what I mean? Like the chorus is there to communicate to the audience the story of the play. And if you're using this example, that's what that's what the announce team are. They're like the Greek chorus in a play. So if you don't have that, you really have to focus on the in-ring action to get all the details in the story of the match. And I mean, you can go by just I love listening to the Japanese commentary just because it's so excitable and they get so fired up on it that you just kind of get caught up in the emotion. But you don't understand. I don't know Japanese. I don't understand the goddamn word they're saying. So, I mean, that might have been something. I'm not 100% sure. It also just might have been a lack of recognition. Sure, he didn't know pretty much any of the other guys with the exception of Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, but he still kind of got into him at the end just because I kind of brought him up to speed. But I didn't really bring him too much up to speed on Shibata and Tanahashi. I told him the backstory behind it all, but he really didn't seem too impressed. Again, he kind of said that was probably the worst match of the 6. I think it was that or the Bait Dunn match that he picked as the worst match of the 6. But regardless, I think he still liked it, but just was not on the level as, Guerrero and Mysterio or the Omega Okada match. The next match we watched was a clear favorite of his, and how could it not be? Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker from WrestleMania 25. This was around WrestleMania time, so I said, we have to watch a WrestleMania match, so I'll say one of the best of all time. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker from WrestleMania 25. He loved this match. Again, similar to Guerrero and Mysterio, he had a little bit of nostalgia coming in. He knew who Undertaker was. He knew who Shawn Michaels was. Granted, he hadn't seen the match, but again, he had seen them wrestle before, so he did remember some of the spots, like the tombstone and the sweet chin music. He knew those spots, so he was really, really into this match. And again, I think it just shows, I mean, this match isn't it kind of is a little, it's going to be 10 years old soon, which I think is just absolutely insane to think about right now. But, next year, this match is going to be 10 years old, which is just, again, like, blows my mind. So it's not necessarily that old, but I mean, it is getting up there in age, and it's aged exponentially well. Like, this match would be the best match on any show in WWE or New Japan, like any day. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, this is, only Okada can have better matches than this. You know what I mean? So again, it's pure wrestling, and it's in its finest form. And the thing is, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, sure, they were in their, like, mid to late 40s. They were way past their prime, but they knew how to captivate the audience. They knew how to get the most out of what little they had to offer. And I shouldn't say it like that. That makes it sound like they phoned it in. But, physically speaking, they couldn't give as much as they used to when they were, in their youth and in their prime. So, but the near falls and all that, like, we saw so many near falls in the Okada Omega match and so many big moves, and not knocking that match. I love that match. But, we saw so many near falls, so many big moves, so many high spots, and there were a lot of, near falls in this match, but they kind of were staggered throughout the match, and they built up to them, that it was just, again, I was watching this match too, and I hadn't seen it in like maybe a year or two, and I was just, once again, captivated by how great the match really, really is. And, he was on the edge of his seat, and by the end, he was just like, dude, that was like really great. Like, he was like, usually at the end, my boss is he's like a very nice guy, and he's like, he's kind of like me in the sense that, like, he always wants everyone to get along and stuff like that. And he was just like, dude, yeah, like, no, that was a really great match. But like, after this, he was like, dude, that was awesome. Like, that was amazing. So I knew right then and there that he really responded positively to that. And the final match we watched, I figured, I told him, he'd always ask me who my favorite wrestler is, and I'd always say Chris Jericho, and I was like, we haven't watched a Jericho match. So I thought, why not Jericho and Omega from Wrestle Kingdom 12? So unfortunately, we weren't able to watch all this match. He was on a tight schedule that day, and the match got interrupted for about 15 minutes because we had to deal with an issue going on in our dorm building. So we were only able to watch like the first 15 minutes and the last like 5 minutes of the match, but he got majority of, what made the match great, and that was just Jericho being fucking awesome in this match. A lot of the spots, and everything, and I think he really responded to Jericho's character in this match. He really took a liking to how Jericho flipped off the camera and shit like that, and how he put like Red Shoes' son in the walls of Jericho. Like, he really kind of liked the heel aspects of Jericho, and he really responded positively to Kenny Omega. So he was really, really into a lot of, the action really kind of took a back seat here. It was really the character work and really kind of the pomp and circumstance. And, the matches we watched from New Japan, they didn't have, the greatest production value. I shouldn't say it like that. Like, they just were very standard, very, basic sets. But, watching the full pomp and circumstance of the Tokyo Dome and Wrestle Kingdom kind of captivated him in the same way that WrestleMania did. So overall, I think his definitive ranking, I asked him to rank all 6 matches on the last day of, on our last meeting. And the ranking he gave me was number 6 was Bate and Dunn from TakeOver. And then number 5 was Tanahashi and Shibata. Then number 4 was Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. Number 3 was Jericho and Omega. Number 2 was Guerrero and Mysterio. And number 1 was Okada and Omega. And again, just it goes to show how great those two really are. And I mean, sure, all 6 matches are great in their own right. I'm not going to knock any of these 6 matches. They're all amazing. But it really just shows, what he responded to and what he didn't. So that was case study number 1. I want to move on to case study number 2. And that is my director in my most previous play that I was in. I was in a play in the spring in April, and the director for the play was one of the faculty members in my theater department at my college. And I wore one day to rehearsal, like one of the early days of rehearsal, I wore a shirt from Homage.com. I don't know if any of you guys know Homage. This is basically just a shameless plug. I'm not affiliated with them, if you can imagine. I don't think they want to affiliate with someone with 3 subscribers. Getting on a tangent here. Point is, their shirts are fucking awesome. They have a lot of cool wrestling shirts. They're nice and soft. I'm wearing one actually right now. I'm wearing this Undertaker shirt right now. But their shirts are really, really cool, and they're really awesome, and they're totally worth it. They're really great. So go to their website and buy their stuff. But my brother had got me one for Christmas. He got me a WCW shirt. It was like Sting and Ric Flair. And I wore this shirt to rehearsal, and he commented on it. He was like, "Hey, Tommy, like, oh, you're wearing the, Ric Flair Sting shirt." And I was like, "Oh yeah, WCW, woo," stuff like that. Kind of just shooting the shit with him. And he said, when he was a kid growing up in the 80s and early 90s, he watched a lot of wrestling. He didn't really watch the Attitude Era stuff. He watched a lot of like Golden Age and a lot of early WCW. And I told him that, all that early stuff is on the network now. And a couple months later, towards the end of the rehearsal process, right around the time the show was starting, he was like, hey, I want to let you know I got the WWE network and I've been watching a lot of old wrestling on the network. I'm like, oh, that's cool, stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, make sure you can catch the pay-per-views coming up. I kind of did a little shameless plug for WWE. And the day after WrestleMania, I went to rehearsal, and I was there 5 or 10 minutes early, and I was just sitting there, just warming up, getting ready for the show. And he came up to me and he was like, hey, I want to talk to you. And I was like, what's going on? First I thought, I was like, fuck, am I fired? What did I do? Like, is he like, yeah, we decided not to cast you anymore, but whatever. That was the first thought that came to my mind, just because I'm a shitty actor. And he was like, I watched WrestleMania the other day. I wanted to talk to you about it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. What'd you think of it? So we had a nice discussion about WrestleMania 34. And I didn't think WrestleMania 34 was that bad. I thought it could have been a hell of a lot better. I thought there was a lot of missed opportunities there. I thought it could have been just, they booked themselves into a corner for some of those matches, and I thought some of the matches disappointed. And after the Ronda Rousey match, it all went downhill. But he said he really enjoyed WrestleMania 34. He said he thought it was a great show. He said he was watching it. His eyes weren't glued to the screen the entire time. He said he was got up and made dinner and shit like that during WrestleMania 34. But he said overall he really enjoyed it. He really liked the Ronda Rousey match. He said that was the best match, which I agree with. So I think it's safe to say that hardcore and casual fans can agree that that was the best match on the show. And he said, I basically, he's been watching the pay-per-views now with me. And when Backlash was going on, he was texting me during that and asking me questions and basically saying the show sucked. And I was like, yeah, they're usually not this bad. So I've been talking to him recently. He's been catching up. He's been watching all the old pay-per-views from 2017 and 2016. And he's been letting me know who his favorites are just from watching the pay-per-views, not watching Raw, not watching SmackDown, with very little, historical context into who these people are. He's been letting me know who his favorites are and who his least favorites are. So as of right now, he's been telling me that his favorites are Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. He very much enjoys Finn Balor. And the one that I thought was very, very interesting was Bray Wyatt. And again, you have to think about it like this. He's a very theatrical person. His background is in theater. That's how he makes his living. So people are going to want different things from their wrestling. And to me, he's very much into the showy characters. He said he was in love with Balor's demon entrance. He said that was one of the best things he's ever seen. He loves the over-the-top character of Bray Wyatt. He says he hates someone like AJ Styles because he says he's too squeaky clean for him. And then he said he liked Finn Balor and he liked Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. The director's gay, and he said he was just really attracted to them. And I can't knock him for that either, because I certainly don't love Alexa Bliss for her, technical in-ring prowess. You know what I mean? So not knocking Alexa Bliss, she's great, but not in the ring. She's no Shawn Michaels in the ring, but goddamn, she is a 10 out of 10. Anyway, moving on. When I talked to him about WrestleMania, though, he was like, what are your opinions on it? And I told him exactly what I thought. And he's like, wow, I'm sorry that you weren't as high on the show as I was. And I told him, what you need to do is watch NXT TakeOver New Orleans. I said I explained to him what NXT was. It was the developmental, kind of like a quote unquote minor league. If you could make a comparison with another sport. And I told him, the show, in my opinion, was a million times better than WrestleMania 34, and WrestleMania 34 was good. So I was like, this show is going to blow your mind. It's amazing. He's like, okay, when I get some time this week, I'll be sure to sit down and watch it. So another day in rehearsal, he came up to me and he was like, hey, I wanted to let you know I watched TakeOver. And I was like, what'd you think? And he was like, I didn't enjoy it as much as WrestleMania 34. And this blew my mind. I could not wrap my head around this. And I thought, sure, the casual fan might want to see more pomp and circumstance. He might want to see more colorful characters and stuff like that. And he explained that one of his biggest turnoffs from the event was just the comparison of production. He said he kind of compared it to a Broadway versus an indie theater, which, I think is a fair comparison. And it's not to say that, NXT takeovers aren't really low rent, and even the show at Full Sail and Center Stage, those aren't really low rent shows. They don't seem very second rate. They're pretty high production value. So I found that just very interesting how that was the first thing he wanted to point out. And he said when he watched the ladder match, he said he just really wasn't into the ladder match, which again blew my mind. I'm like, how can you not love that match? It was amazing. I give it 4.5 in my review. I disagree with my review entirely. It's 5 stars. I'm going to give that match a full 5. I thought it was awesome. I watched it a second time. It was amazing. So that's a little side rant. But he did say that his favorite wrestlers from the show were the Velveteen Dream, which I fully support because Velveteen Dream is awesome. And then the one that shocked me was Killian Dane. He said he loved Killian Dane. He loved his look. He loved his presence. And he loved they did a Vader bomb in the ladder match, which I just thought was amazing. He said he didn't care for Adam Cole, which, again, blew my mind. I couldn't wrap my head around that. More so than he couldn't stand AJ Styles, because that mathematically doesn't make sense. And then he said he really enjoyed the main event with Gargano and Ciampa. He said he really liked the story. He said it was really nice, how he didn't want to hurt his friend, but at the end of the day, he turned on him because his friend's a dick and all that. So at the end of the day, it's very interesting hearing what casuals have to say, or, what new fans have to say, or people getting back into the show. And what I do think is the silver lining in all this is wrestling is still appealing to people. You know what I mean? You might have to have a certain mindset to like it. It might not be as universally appealing to everyone, but someone with a theatrical background can find something to enjoy about it, and also can find something to enjoy in the main roster. I mean, how many times do we come on here and trash the main roster of WWE and talk about how it sucks and NXT is better and go watch New Japan and shit like that? There's still something that people like in this. So I mean, it's not dead in the water. And, with WWE expanding their horizons and going to Fox, this might be, they might need to capture a new audience. And to me, there's a little optimism, especially with my director, that there might be more people out there who actually like this stuff. You know what I mean? And it's always fun talking to people about wrestling, no matter what their opinions are. Maybe I should, don't quote me on that, because sometimes it's not fun to talk about wrestling with people, depending on who they are. But for most people, it is. So that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed my 2 case studies, and hope you take away what I did about, wrestling and their fans. But that is it for me. My name is Jericho 8704, and I will see all of you guys later.